Hello all, welcome to the first Open Science Seminar for 2020. I just want to thank Lea Mercanti for this wonderful presentation. I have to say, yes, this is the place where I received my, officially, my PhD back in 2013, and that's actually the first time that I present something related to science here, so that's very, a bit, it's a big deal, being here. Whatever. Let's see whether this works. Okay. So, first Open Science Seminar for 2020. Let's take a look of what we did in 2019 for those of you who are new in this place. We start, these seminars, they are actually part of this Think Open at CIMeC initiative, which is the open science initiative within Center of Mind and Brain Sciences. We plan to do up to 5 or 6 seminars per year. And last year we started in February with Folko Banizza, which is actually a PhD student here, talking about register reports. Then we went on with Matteo Caffini in May. He talked about how to reach data fusion in an open research environment, and he specifically focused on the near-infrared spectroscopy case. On May and in November, I talked about open access for open science, and I focused first on general aspects of this topic, and then I specifically focused my attention on communicating online your research products in an open access environment. And then in November and December we had 2 guest speakers, Professor Perugini and Professor Grassi. They talked about replicability crisis, and how to deal with these problems in an open science environment. We covered lots of these kind of semantic aspects we used to mention every time we present something at the Open Science Seminar: preparation, discovery, analysis, and so on and so forth. Open access for open science. This specific talk, which is similar to those 2 I gave last year, but don't worry, for those of you that already attended those talks, I integrated lots of concepts. This is not redundant, and it's also related to publication and outreach as well. We will start by introducing the topic, and then we will focus to a specific way to go open, which is the green road. And then at the end, let's say this first part, even for those of you who are still not interested in, for example, research evaluation, talking about, for example, master students or PhD students, maybe you're not interested in, let's say, research evaluation and so on. This first part, it's pretty generic, and it's really useful to get, let's say, the flavor of this discussion which is going on since a long time. And then the last part is specifically dedicated to a tool which is institutional research information system, IRIS. I think all the people dealing with the evaluation of their research, they already know this tool, and I will give a very quick how to complete or integrate your research products on IRIS in order to make them visible and evaluable by formal, let's say, government institution and funding institution. We are talking about giving free and immediate access to research products. This is what open access is about. This topic, it's not new, and it's not even recent. In 1991, a few physicists in US, they start putting let's say, versions of their papers before submitting them to a subscription journal in an online archive. This initiative developed until they gave the name archive, and unsurprisingly, this is an archive of preprints. 1991, so it's almost 30 years ago. I bet that many people in this room, they were not even born at that time. So this is not a recent topic. I just want to mention 1997, the initiative by physicists, usual suspects, in Sista, Trieste. This is the first initiative in Europe, the first attempt to create an online archive, which developed at that point that they create an actual online journal. You have to think about the time, like 1997. At that time, the web was not that developed and so on. Many scientists, they used to have, like, all the institutions, they used to have these physical archives, so papers. I mean, papers in paper, not in an electronic form. Maybe some of you remember those kind of cabinets with sort of like slides and taking like these journals and making copies and so on and so forth. And that time in Trieste, they decided to create an electronic journal. And nowadays, this is one of the most, journal of high energies physics, this is one of the most significant experiences ever in science. So let's say that during the 90s, like many other things, all these kind of like thoughts were boiling over until the point that in 2003, scientists decided to gather and let's say develop or write down a proper declaration, which is called Berlin Declaration because it was made in Berlin. And this is like the pillar of, it's very brief, it's very quick, we are going to read it in a few seconds. And it's the formal definition of what open access should be. What is actually recent, this is something that that could interest, let's say, professors and other, let's say, people dealing with research evaluation. So in 2019, a few weeks ago, Italian institutions, they stated that research products that are going to be evaluated should be freely accessible by everyone, and they should be deposited in an online repository, for example, an institutional repository maintained by your institution, an open subject repository, for example, archive, and so on and so forth. So this is a topic that nowadays it's something that is kind of mandatory to be at least discussed among scientists. The premises of Berlin Declaration 2003 were that sources of knowledge and cultural heritage approved by the scientific community, they should be readily and widely available to society. This is sort of like political statement that says that knowledge should be for everyone. And internet, in their vision, should be seen as a functional method to medium to distribute knowledge. I know that in these days where social media are, let's say, source of fake news and many other distortion, but in the intention of people writing down the Berlin Declaration, internet was something that would be useful to spread knowledge. And knowledge includes, for example, scientific research, which is the topic that may be interesting for us, raw data, metadata, source material, and then other stuff like pictorial and graphical material and so on. Berlin Declaration, let's read it together. It's very quick, very brief, very concise, but it's dense, and it actually opens many kind of, let's say, lead to many other consequences. It's two statements. The first one related to authors' intents. So authors and potential right holders of a contribution, they grant free, irrevocable, worldwide right of access to their work. And this part is just a declaration of intent. It requires authors and right holders just to think about granting access to their intellectual product. In this part of the Berlin Declaration, there is no like neither editorial or practical implication. We are not talking about like double dipping, publication fees, article processing charges. It's just a declaration of intents, how you think about your research product and the destination of your research product. But of course, there is the pars construens, the second part, action needed. A complete version of the work is deposited and therefore published in at least one online repository which is maintained by an organization supporting open access. This is one of the most relevant parts of this declaration. So you should take a complete version of your work and upload it somewhere. Where? In an online repository which is maintained by someone which is supporting open access, not someone that wants to make money with your research product. And the way in which an author implements this statement defines whether and how the piece of work is available or not in an open access form. This statement, I think it's really interesting because it's inclusive. It doesn't rule out any specific possibility for the authors to deposit the paper. In this statement, they didn't write down, they didn't rule out the fact that you can deposit the paper somewhere and then submit it to a subscription journal. It excludes commercial initiatives, though. And we are going to mention a few commercial initiatives later on. And here, the role of journal editors, it's kind of like shaping up because it determines how a work, let's say the way in which the work will be considered and the way in which you will be going open. So that was a sort of introduction. So it's not a recent topic. There is a formal declaration which gives somehow practical direction on how to go open. And then here in the second part, I will illustrate quickly the way in which today we consider, let's say, relevant to go open. There are two equivalent roads. One road which is called the green road, which is the self-archiving way, and it's the way we are going to describe in details today. And then there is the gold road, which include the open access journals with article processing charges plus, let's say. So those journals where you don't have to have a subscription, you can read the research product published in those journals. Everyone could read the contributions on those journals, but you have to pay to publish there. I have to say that here I'm not considering, let's say, a specific or a particular way to go open, which is very popular nowadays, which is someone defined it the red road, someone they on purpose exclude this way because it's not really, let's say, a way to go open, which is when you publish your paper on a subscription journal, and that subscription journal, it offers you a paid open access option. This is very popular. But still, bottom line of this procedure is that you're going to pay the subscription to the journal and the open access option. So you're going to pay twice to obtain the result of going open. A result that you could almost always obtain with the green road. As a matter of fact, it's the way we're going to describe today. This way, it's always free of charges. It's approved by, for example, MUR for research evaluation. It's simple to finalize using, for example, Unity and tools. The problem with this option, or let's say the byproduct, is that, for example, it suffers conditions imposed by the publishers, for example, the embargo periods. But this is something that almost always refer just to the final version of your paper. The directions to go open in the green way are the following. So you have your paper, let's say the version of the paper you're going to submit to a subscription journal. So with this paper, with this version of the paper in your hands, you're going to submit and eventually publish your work in a subscription journal. At the same time, you're going to take your preprint or submitted version and deposit it in an open access repository. And that's it. You went open. You can present your work as open access for your funding agency, for a research evaluation agency, and so on and so forth. And also, your work, which is going to be, of course, peer-reviewed from a journal, it's already there, and it's already there online. It's visible, it can be discussed, you can already get feedback, and you have already, let's say, a recipient that you can present, for example, in conference and so on, and people can point to an already static place where your work is. There are many online tools to check what you could do on how you should go green. One of the most interesting tools, in my opinion, is this Sherpa Romeo tool. You just go there, write down the journal you want to, the journal you pick for your submission, for example, neuroimage. And this is sort of Google for journals. It will return lots of features related to the open access discussion, related to the journal. And here, I thought that it was relevant to report this journal because, okay, this is actually the current situation. So, if you submit your paper in neuroimage, you can archive preprint, so you can go green. You can go open the green way. You can archive the post-print, which is the final draft post-reviewing, let's say. And you can also archive publisher version PDF. That's like the definition of an open access journal. And this is because neuroimage, right now in 2020, it began an open access journal. For example, last year I have this screenshot from my talk in May. Last year, neuroimage was not an open access journal. As a matter of fact, you could not archive publisher version PDF. And that's, let's say, an evolution of what you could do with this journal. Either way, you could always, last year as well, you could archive the post-print, so the final draft post-reviewing version. So it's not really a big, I mean, it's a big change, but from, let's say, the open access point of view, it's not like a huge change. And for example, other journals, for example, Neuron, Sherpa Romeo gives you already a glance of what you could do and not do. For example, if you want to submit your paper in Neuron, then you already know that you could archive preprint, and you cannot ever archive publisher version or PDF, so the formatted article. And you could archive the post-print, so the version of the paper after the reviewing, just 12 months after the paper is published. So that's the point, or let's say that's the problem of going green. Embargoes and so on. So after you have your paper and you Google around which journal you want to consider and so on and so forth, you have to choose an online repository to deposit your paper. Archive, already introduced it. It's a very famous preprint archive. Nowadays, since 2013, there is this online initiative. It's called bioRxiv. It's maintained by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. I'm reporting this because this is an online resource which is maintained by an open access enthusiast, let's say, initiative, which is Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. This is slowly establishing itself as one of the standards in the field. It can contain full papers. It gives you a digital object identifier, a DOI, which is a permanent link to your paper. You can update your deposits there, and you have the history of your updates. It takes comments. It has social media, let's say, flavor, in the sense that if you tweet about this paper, then you will see under the paper who tweeted that, what they are talking about when they share the DOI, and so on. Well, what I just want to point out is that maybe, I hope not many of you, but some of you could think about uploading their work in academia-oriented social network because they look captivating, they're easy to use, they do lots of stuff like in an automatic way. You just type your name and 10 seconds later, you have your website with your photo, all your papers, and so on. I'm talking about ResearchGate, academia.edu, and so on. They also offer a paper hosting service, which seems to be similar to Green Road Deposit. And you can think about, let's say you can think, okay, my papers, they are on ResearchGate. They are online, preprint, for example. I have my link to the paper, there is the description, there is my photo, all my science is there. So I already have a version of my papers deposited online. But this is not open access. Just remember the Berlin Declaration, part 2. These online archives, they are not maintained by an open access enthusiast initiative. They are commercial initiatives. So they could cease to exist, they could change conditions, all of a sudden they could sell all your stuff, all your data to someone else, and so on. So I'm not saying that you don't have to just do whatever you want. I mean, I'm just saying that this is not an official way to go open. So if someone says, did you go open? Yes, I deposited my work on ResearchGate, you didn't go open. So let's switch. I think I actually finished the part of what is the Green Road, how to go green, how to not go green, and so on. Let's just switch to the last part of the talk, which is related to going green by using Iris. Because there are many initiatives let's say, related to, there are many online open access archives coming from many different institutions. Let's say bioRxiv, we already mentioned that, Zenodo, OSF by Center of Open Science, CIarchive, and so on and so on and so forth. Each of them it carries pros and cons, and you can, let's say, kind of proliferate the copies of your papers in all these archives and have them disseminated online in many places. What is very common for almost all the institutions related to research is that there is already an archive which is maintained by the institution itself. And most of the time, as you part of that institution, you are required to maintain the list of your research products on that archive. And this most of the time is crucial for research evaluation and funding. That's the case for UnityN as well. As a matter of fact, UnityN, it has this institutional research information system, which is developed by CIMeC, which is another Italian institution. There is an entire office dedicated not only to IRIS, but to many aspects of scientific publications within UnityN, which is called Scientific Publication Office. And this archive, it's I'm not going to sell this to you, but I have to say that it's a very interesting archive because it carries many capabilities. Open access is one of these, but also Sherpa Romeo integration. So this means that those Googling around to see what are the open access capabilities of a journal, it's already integrated in this tool. It has this OAI PMH, it's not a bad word. This means that an archive that has these capabilities, this means that the search engines, let's say Google Scholar, they are facilitated to grab information from this article by construction, let's say. You could go open, let's say you maintain your own website, drsmith /sites.google.com, and you put your papers or preprints on your website. That's totally fine. I mean, it's something which is allowed also by the research evaluation procedure. The point here is that your website is very unlikely to have these OAI PMH capabilities. So, for example, Google Scholar won't automatically recognize the fact that on your website there is your paper or there is a version of your paper which is a scientific paper. If you put, on the other hand, your paper on such an archive, for example, IRIS, Google Scholar is going to automatically recognize that there is your scientific paper which has scientific content and so on and so forth. And also, this is going to grab lots of metadata, which is, in some sense, as relevant as the data for some reasons. And also, we discussed about this last November, it has rich, highly integrated, and dynamically update altmetrics. Talking about altmetrics is not the purpose of this talk, but I just want to say that in this specific moment, having, let's say, dealing with altmetrics could be not as important, but it's something that is going to complement the classic bibliometrics measures. Altmetrics is something that refers to how many times your paper is visualized, how many times your paper is downloaded, how many people they are talking about that on Twitter or on other social networks, how many popular science journals are talking about your paper, and so on and so forth. So this is something that refers to, let's say, the general impact of your paper with respect to the scientific impact. It's like the buzz your paper is going to generate online. And it's something, I mean, it's from a scientific point of view, I know for sure that it's not as important, or it has a different kind of importance with respect to bibliometrics, but it still has its significance. And this is mandatory for Italian and European research evaluation. You put your stuff on IRIS, and then it's going to be validated and evaluated by funding institution. The interesting part of the story, especially here in Trento, is that there are supervised sanity checks. So people, they are going to check what you put there and see whether there are missing metadata, if you were wrong in including one author with respect to another, and so on and so forth. This is the last part. It's sort of like a quick how-to Iris for going open. So this is dedicated especially to people that have already records on Iris. As part of UnityN, you already have an account on Iris. You can connect to Iris, iris.unityn.it, and you will be presented with a list of desktop products. These are your papers you uploaded or recorded throughout the years. Just pick a paper, and you will be presented with a screen with lots of metadata. For example, the journal, date of publication, the DOI, and so on and so forth. To go open, just click on Complete Submission here. When you click to Complete Submission, you will be presented with a sort of like paper metadata revision. So, for example, the kind of article, the title, the year of publication, and so on. This is most of the time already generated automatically by the system. And then there is the upload screen. In this upload screen, you are requested to submit a file. What I want to stress for you in this specific part of the talk is that there is here on the right Sherpa ROM integration. So here I have the list of what I could do and what I should not do according to the journal policies with respect to the open access. This is something like, you know, a way to save time or a way to be sure in an automatic way, be sure of what I could do and what I cannot do. Because here, this paper was published in Magnetic Resonance Imaging Journal, and in that paper, I could archive the preprint, I could archive a postprint, I cannot archive publisher version. So if I'm going to upload the publisher version, I'm like I was already warned that I could not. Of course, then, because of the way in which Iris works, I will have a supervised check, and it's very likely that the administration would say, you cannot do that. But still, here I have already like this kind of summary which reminds me what I could not do. And then I would just upload my file and select the type of material I'm going to include in my record. Here there is list. If I'm going to upload an abstract, other material, for example, supplementary material, or whatever. And then I have the list of exactly what we initiated, what we mentioned before. For example, the referral postprint, the preprint. For example, if you're dealing with very strict, with journals with very strict policies, or for example, the editorial version, the case of neuroimage, or whatever, doctoral thesis, for example. And then there is also this kind of access policy. According to what you could upload related to what the right box suggests. For example, suppose that I uploaded the postprint. I'm allowed to do that. And then I click Open Access, and I went open. And that's it. I can finalize the submission with Verify. I will undergo a sanity check by the administration, but my research output is open access, and therefore is valuable by it could be considered for evaluation by evaluation agencies. Here there is also the option of uploading something which is subject to an embargo. So I upload today, for example, the author postprint version. I specify the date when the embargo will finish, and I'm already done. Once the embargo is finished, I went open. And that's, I mean, a very handy way to be, let's say, coherent with the journal policies and just to skip all the like coming back when the embargo finishes and so on and so forth. That's just because I want to upload the post-print, for example, but if I archive the preprint, I went open and there is no embargo. So once you completed the step, the research product will be checked for metadata coherence by the administration, and your product will be open access. The interesting part of the story is that IRIS is very dynamic because you could always update your research product by following exactly the same steps. Suppose that, for example, all of a sudden the policy of the journal changed, like in neuroimage case, from, let's say, a paid option journal, it become an open access journal, then what you want to do is to put on IRIS the final version, for example, the formatted version. Just go there, follow the step, upload the final version, you went open, and you have your updated research product. So, just a quick recap. Going open, the green road, it's free of charge, it's safe, there are rich institutional resources available, it's compliant with the research evaluation system. This is an article, this is, let's say, one of the articles of the Italian law, and at the point A, it's explicitly mentioned institutional repositories. So if you want to be compliant with this law and you want to use IRIS, that's the way, and you're fine. I just want to say a very quick, let's say, a very quick different word with respect to what we said so far. This recent law, I think December 2019, it includes lots of many new concepts. Open access is one of these. The other interesting concept is that this law specifically mentions research products and not only papers. This means that for Italian law and for evaluation purposes, they are going to consider both publications, let's say scientific papers, but also other scientific products. For example, protocols, open data repositories, and so on. This is it may seem just like a formal or technical step, but this is actually a very interesting change of the approach by the Italian law to the way in which they think a researcher life is, let's say, about. It's not only, nowadays, it's not about publication or scientific papers anymore. It also includes other products. This is something that follows, let's say, in the US, the National Science Foundation, the NSF, they made this, let's say, huge step back in 2013. So after 6 years, Italian law also, they actually included this part, and I think it's really relevant. And that's it. I hope that this was not too technical, and I hope that especially the first part was of interest also for the students and the PhD students. And I think I'm open for questions and other discussions.
Thank you very much. I have just one question, because you mentioned among the open repository, PubMed. But any time I try to look for something in PubMed, it says that I do not access. So how can one have access to PubMed? Yes, I cannot have for free the system always asks me for a login name or something like that, and he asks me to look if I am in an organization which is allowed to access PubMed or whatever.
I'd say that PubMed initiative, it's a bit of a complex animal, let's say. I think that it has like, it's PubMed, let's say, paper search engine, and also PubMed Central, which is actually an open access archive. I think that this PubMed Central archive is subject to journal policies restrictions, so it's not mandatory that if a paper is on you can see a paper on PubMed, it's not mandatory that this paper is open access. If it's open access, though, you can find it on PubMed Central. So I think it's not an online archive. I don't know. It's not an online repository for open access. So I don't know. Yeah, okay, yeah, so the Italian law. So in that case, I think they are thinking about this PubMed Central online repository, which is sort of like a PubMed capability to deposit the paper which are already open access there. And for them, I think, okay, now I understood. I think the flavor of this kind of mentioning PubMed there is that if somehow your paper is open access, and even if you don't know anything about open access and whatever, chances are that your paper is already there, already openly accessible, so you don't have to worry to, for example, upload it on Iris or whatever. It's already there. And they are saying, if it's there, for us it's fine. This is the flavor. But if it's not there, then it's your duty to, if you want that paper, because I'm not an expert, I'm not going to do research evaluation myself, but I think every researcher should put 5 products, I think. Or I don't know, I don't want to say, let's say, false sticks, but I think you're going to select the papers you want to be considered for the evaluation. So if that paper, which is not open, you want it to be considered for the evaluation, then you have to do something to make it open. And for example, this using Iris, which is mandatory for other evaluations or for evaluations in general, it's a way to give an open access flavor to the product you want the evaluation initiative to consider. Other questions?
Thank you for the talk. I have a question about the gold open access. When you publish, for example, in eLife or some other journals, they have actually to put them also on archive. So if you take eLife, they put everything on GitHub. And my question is then, what's the advantage to put it yourself on Iris or something else? Does it give you more visibility, or what's actually the advantages? Because commercial publishers are supposed to do that.
Well, I don't know like all the features of eLife, but do you have like article processing charges on APCs? So do you have to pay to publish on eLife? I mean, the gold option, it's a way to go open. Let's put it this way. There is like this economic part of the story. So most of the time, the gold journal, the article processing charges or publication fees, let's say, they are really high, like 4,000 or whatever. And also, let's put it this way. I'm not saying I'm not an expert of eLife, but maybe for example, a cogneuro-oriented community, you have like sort of like target journals you want, where you want to submit, for example, neuroimage or whatever, because you want the audience of your paper to be, of course, as generic as possible, but you also want like cog-neuro community to read that paper and so on. And if that journal doesn't offer an option, or it offers as an option just a paid one, then going green, it's a free of charge option to disseminate your paper in an open way. And that's why for some journals you have to do it by yourself. And that's also why gold open access option, it's not always the best option, even if it's a totally fine option and it has its own dignity and so on. I don't know if this answered your question.
People who are faculty in the University of Trento are automatically in IRIS. We have to do this to be able to be evaluated by the ministry and to receive potential funds, participate in grants. As a student, potentially you don't have to. So the question was, if you're a PhD student, do you have automatic access to IRIS, and is this visible under the MUER? Or if you have the funds to go open access in eLife, and then you will leave Italy, then being in IRIS is irrelevant because you will not have to be evaluated by the Italian system.
Okay, so I would say that first, I'm not 100% sure that a PhD student has his own. I'm like 95% sure because it's part of UniDN and like doesn't cost anything to just give another, like with Google Drive, Gmail, whatever, Iris, okay. I'd say that for a person who, of course, as most of the time happens, is going to leave to another institution, still, chances are that you publish with someone else in that institution. Yeah, so the record remains there in that institution for the other people who collaborated. And the second part is that IRIS, in any case, it gives you a digital object identifier. So you know that your paper is there forever, and you have always a pointer to the paper. And this is useful to some sense, especially if you published on, for example, a journal which is not open. You want like a permanent link which is accessible by everyone with no subscription. Suppose that you publish in an, let's say, an obscure journal, something which is just for I don't know, mathematician with interest in brain-heart interaction. So chances are that, I don't know, CIMeC has his own subscription, but if you go to whatever other institution, they have not. So it's useful to have a pointer to a paper which is accessible by everyone. And finally, IRIS, it's an archive, but it's many other things. So it's also a sort of hub for the metrics of your paper, which are dynamically updated. So it might be useful to have like a sort of permanent place where the metrics they're going to be always updated and updated, and you can follow the history of the, let's say, the impact of your paper throughout the years. So that's why I would say that also for PhD students and people that maybe would go out from UniDN with just one publication, it might be useful to fine-tune properly the research desktop, or let's say the publication list, as they say in IRIS. But again, I don't want to sell IRIS. I know that it has many drawbacks, but for several reasons, and also I think the effort is not that incredible. I think the payback it's pretty, it's fair enough, let's say. Okay. Other questions? Okay, I don't know who's the chairman. Okay. I'm finished. So